All right, so he was speaking in Hebrew right there, but I did want to bring you the very latest as you're taking a live look here in Tel Aviv, Israel, as Iran and Israel continue to exchange airstrikes. The region bracing for a prolonged conflict after Israel's surprise bombardment of Iran's nuclear and military sites on Friday, which killed several top generals and nuclear scientists. Iran said Israel also struck 2 oil refineries. And we also have an additional update for you, as we have learned that President Trump vetoed a plan presented by Israel to the U.S. to kill Iran's supreme leader. That is according to a U.S. official familiar with the matter. The Israelis informed the Trump administration in recent days that they had developed a credible plan to kill Iran's supreme leader. After being briefed on the plan, the White House made it clear to Israeli officials that President Trump was opposed to the Israelis making the move. The Trump administration very keen on keeping Israel's military operation aimed at decapitating Iran's nuclear program from continuing to grow, and saw the plan to kill Iran's supreme leader as one that might further inflame the conflict and potentially destabilize the region. And to speak more on this, I do want to bring in Harley Lippman, who is a foreign affairs analyst, to talk more about all of these developments. Harley, we appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
My pleasure.
So what do you make of the very latest development in that President Trump vetoed a plan to kill Iran's supreme leader, concerned that it could destabilize the region?
Well, that's very unfortunate, because I think it would have the opposite effect. You know, you're keeping still the head of the snake. So the problem is, even though you're taking out a lot of military commanders and nuclear scientists, which are essential for Israel to maintain its survival and prevent Iran from threatening other neighbors in the region, nevertheless, instability is built in when you have Ayatollah Khamenei in power, because his whole mission in life is to destroy the West, to destroy our Judeo-Christian values, and our America, as you heard Bibi Netanyahu say, it's a little Satan, and America's a big Satan. So they'll start with Israel and then move towards Europe and America. So I think that Israel should have not had one hand tied behind their back. I admire and I'm grateful for the support of President Trump in making sure we're defanging a terrorist rogue nation that wants to destroy another sovereign nation, which is Israel. But I think we were all wondering why Ayatollah Khamenei was not taken out, and there's still time to do that. And while, of course, violence and war is always terrible, it's sometimes necessary.
Well, I also have to think now that this announcement, this decision has been made public, that might change how Iran responds. How does a country such as Iran deal with this knowledge that Israel, and no doubt that they knew that there were going to be attacks on Iran's supreme leader, but now that we hear about it and we hear about President Trump's veto, how does Iran respond?
Well, Iran may take some comfort that President Trump did not want Ayatollah Khamenei killed. So that may smooth things over to perhaps actually have an agreement, have a deal made. So it may have an unintended helpful effect in terms of strengthening the ability of Iran and the United States to come to some understanding. On the other hand, again, it speaks to the challenges of not going full force and eliminating your enemy. You know, one of the things President Trump speaks about all the time is endless wars. Well, one of the reasons why there are endless wars is that countries like the United States, like in Iraq and Afghanistan, Vietnam, and Israel and Gaza fought the war with one hand tied behind their back. As a student of history, you have closure and you get peace when you resolve conflicts, not when you think you can manage conflict. You need conflict resolution so that you can move on and create circumstances for peace and people in the region could have a better future. And I worry that with Ayatollah Khamenei still in power, that's going to make this very problematic because the likelihood is he's seething with revenge, wants to now will make time his ally, and think of some other way of harming Israel. It could be chemical or biological weapons, even if they don't have nuclear forces to develop. So I think there's more to be done.
Israel and the United States are incredibly strong allies. Israel seeking the support of President Trump, with this plan, President Trump vetoing it. Does this impact at all the relationship, the close ties that the Trump administration has with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu?
Not at all. The Trump administration and Israel are very connected and very aligned. Israel is very grateful for the tremendous support of President Trump, who arguably has done more for Israel than any other American president. So that's extraordinary, and it means everything. At the same time, great friends can disagree. Husband and wives could disagree, and they love each other. So disagreement doesn't mean that it's causing a rupture in any way. I don't think that's the case. I think President Trump is impressed by Israel's military efficiency and abilities. It also speaks to the ability of American-made weapons, that it's superior to our enemy. Also, it speaks to intelligence collaboration, which has been exceptional. So I think this has worked out extremely well for the United States and Israel. For President Trump, he has the best of all worlds. He could tell his isolationist MAGA supporters that, hey, look, America didn't get involved. There's no American troops or doing anything. It's all Israel, which is true. Yet at the same time, he gets the benefit from success. Israel launched an extraordinarily highly effective, you can't use any other word, but brilliant attack, surprised Iran. Iran never thought that Israel would attack them while they were still in the midst of negotiations with the United States. After all, today on Sunday was supposed to be the 6th meeting in Oman, where Iran was meeting with the United States negotiators to work out a deal. So Israel surprised Iran. And again, the great news here is that Israel tactically once again showed its brilliance on the battlefield. But the real question for Israel is strategically, what will it take to define success for Israel? And how will they make sure that they are going to be safe now and in the future?
So let's pose that question to you, Harley. How does Israel define success?
Well, I think their stated goals is that Iran does not have nuclear bomb and does not have the ability to make one in the near future or in the midterm, if you will. I don't know exactly the period of time, but somewhere, maybe not forever, but I think that's the stated goal of Israel. Along with that, they took out facilities that build ballistic missiles because you need a missile to take that nuclear warhead somewhere. So taking out the missile facilities and the ability to make missiles is very important. Israel did that too. And to take out Iranian scientists who have been working in secret to build a nuclear bomb was very important. So Israel did that. So Israel could define success as doing that. It may not be enough, because if Iran continues to attack Israel, or Israel gets information that Iran is planning something else more sinister and more evil, could be attacking Israelis around the world, could be attacking Jews around the world. Iranian regime are very creative. They think out of the box. Israel will have to be very effective in figuring out what they're going to do. So I think Israel may have to go in further. But I think a lot of people think it's going to create turmoil in the region. The opposite. This is going to finally create the groundwork for peace, because Iran has been creating all the conflict in the region. They have been arming all these terrorist militias and all these militant governments, from Hezbollah in Lebanon to Hamas in Gaza to the Houthis in Lebanon to the Assad regime in Syria, they were all committing terrorist acts. They all attacked Israel. And Israel is finally saying once and for all, enough is enough. They're going to take out their enemies. They're not going to wait to be victims again. The one major lesson of October 7th is you can't wait. If you wait, the price will be too high. Look what happened in Israel. They had hundreds of people murdered, raped on October 7th, even though they were getting warning signals. Israel's in a dangerous neighborhood and they had to act. In fact, on that note, what's so interesting is Israel got alarming news that Iran had the ability to make 9 nuclear bombs in a matter of weeks. So Israel had no choice. They had to act. And Iran, unlike any other nation that wants nuclear energy and nuclear power, talks about destroying another nation. No other country does that. Not even North Korea or China talk about destroying another nation. Even India and Pakistan, that are both nuclear powers, have signed protocols that neither one will use it first. So Iran is in a unique position where Israel had no choice.
As we take a look at the geopolitical landscape of this region, how pivotal of a moment are we at?
Oh, this is, I don't know of anything in the past 40 years that arguably is more significant than this. Even the Abraham Accords, peace with Egypt and Jordan are all monumental events in the Middle East, no doubt. But again, it left the number one nemesis of Israel and the United States. It left that regime intact, the Iranian regime. So I think that, one, we have to remember that the Iranian people are being persecuted. They have been kidnapped and kept hostage by this regime since 1979. I think we have to think of the Iranian people and work to liberate them, the way the United States did in Europe in World War II. Second, we have to think of, and what does that mean to liberate? Regime change. I've always been saying this. You want to have peace in the region, you want to have stability, you have to take out that regime, because their whole reason for existing is to create wars and conflicts so that they can dominate the region and eventually take over the world. This is their own words. And our adversaries tend to always broadcast what they're going to do. We get arrogant, and I define arrogance as we think we know better what our enemy means than their own words. But they say they want to kill us, and they do it. Remember, no one has killed more Americans outside of Iraq and Afghanistan than Iran in Lebanon with Hezbollah. When President Reagan was president, they killed hundreds of Americans, and they've killed hundreds since. So they're an enemy of everything we care about. They're an enemy of our allies. And it may sound strange to say, but I couldn't be more hopeful. I haven't had an experience with events in the Middle East that I can remember, other than the Abraham Accords, that have been as hopeful as this. Because if they could have the chance of inspiring the Iranian people to rise up and overthrow this regime, or if we have to enter Iran to do it, it'll create a new era of peace in the region. It'll be one of the best things to happen in the world since the ending of the Cold War. So I'm very hopeful.
And Harley, I did want to share with our viewers this social media post by Israel Defense Forces with some video saying surface-to-air missile launcher in Tehran struck. So we can see that these airstrikes continue. And, you make a very interesting point when it comes to the action that Israel is taking. And for some, it might seem like it's escalating. And from what you're sharing, this is the starting point of de-escalation and going back to stability in the region. We also have another social media post, Harley, that I wanted to share with our viewers. This is EU President Ursula von der Leyen right here saying that she just spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, saying we are following developments in the Middle East with deep concern. I reiterated our commitment to peace, stability, and diplomatic efforts leading to de-escalation. In this context, I underlined that Israel has the right to defend itself. Iran is the main source of regional instability. And so she's agreeing with everything with what you said. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens when we're taking a look at the timeline, Harley. Is there a particular point in time that we should be keeping an eye out for, or is it more so an event that we should be keeping an eye out for?
I think it'll be when Iran is exhausted from being able to attack other neighbors. It's hard to measure exactly when that's going to be, but we heard in your newscast how Bibi Netanyahu made a reference to World War II, that had the West acted earlier, 60 million people would have lived. And their delay, by being in denial, by having anxiety and fear of war, it created a far worse outcome. Had they acted earlier and taken out Hitler and his generals in, let's say, the 1930s. And a more recent example is Iraq. Remember, Iraq was building a nuclear bomb. In 1981, Israel took out that nuclear reactor. They did the world a favor. And at the time, everybody was condemning Israel. But later, everybody secretly thanked Israel because they did something that the world needed to have done. But no one had the courage or the commitment to do this, but Israel did it. Israel did it again in Syria, not that long after. So Israel is doing something to keep the world from having nuclear weapons being spread, especially in a region that'll probably end up using one.
Harley, as always, we appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
And we are keeping a very